hello everyone. Jeff Steinberg here with the Invisible Disabilities Association as part of the Love Ideas Summit. We have some great guests here today. We've got Mark and Leanna Treitler, and Leanna is Mark's daughter. And a few years ago, they wrote a book that I think really kind of will help us speak into what's going on in today's times of lockdown and some of the stress and different things that are affecting people because we're in closer relationship or we're not able to get out, and that's around alcohol and drug abuse. And the book that these guys wrote is pretty cool. It's called Alcohol, Drugs, and You, A Young Person's Guide to Avoiding Addiction. And so, you know, I think Leanna, being the daughter, is going to have a lot of insight into, you know, how did I deal with dad, you know, in the times when he was struggling before, you know, he got sober, if you will. So I'm going to let you guys kind of run with this. I mean, Mark, maybe you want to start as far as, you know, what was going on in life? What is it that actually pulled you into this addiction? And then we'll move into, you know, how to avoid it and the impact it had on your daughter, and really then how that reconciliation can happen.
Sure. Thanks for having us. We're happy to try to share our experiences and my experiences, try to help families and kids avoid some of the pitfalls. So I come from a family, and not necessarily my mother or father, just because they'll be watching this, but the family tree is loaded with addiction on both sides of alcohol and lots of drugs, as well as my sister. So I started, actually didn't drink much in high school, which is sort of strange, but then when I got to college, and joined a fraternity and lived in the fraternity, you know, it was the normal thing to do. In my mind, started drinking with friends, seemed somewhat normal. And then, as with most alcoholics, it just progresses over time. And so through college, through law school, and marriage, and the first jobs, and the kids, you know, every year it sort of progresses, and most alcoholics, it progresses the same way. You start out socially drinking with a few beers, then it turns into a lot more than a few beers, then it turns into a lot of wine at dinner, then it turns into you're hiding vodka bottles in the cabinet because it won't smell on your breath, and then you're throwing it away when the wife and the kids aren't looking, just as you see in the movie. So it's you know, every alcoholic friend I have that I know pretty much ended in that state. You know, the fact that I had it in my genes on both sides of the family sort of, you know, made the normal drinking in college almost a guarantee to become an alcoholic. The studies and the statistics for that, you know, show that strong a correlation. So, you know, eventually, and we can talk about what maybe get better, and I went to rehab and focus on things, and thankfully I'm coming up on 12 years sober now.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir. And one of the things I wanted to make sure that, you know, that I told my children, that I taught my children, was the dangers of drugs and alcohol, you know, especially with addiction in our genes. So that turned into a conversation with my daughter, and when she'll talk, you can tell she's pretty smart and creative. And somehow the idea was that, wow, every family we know has something like this, so let's not only discuss it internally, let's put something in a book form, and there away we went.
That's cool. Well, thanks. So Leanna, why don't you, if you can, take us back to, I will call them the bad days. And again, you know, having looked over your book and stuff, what was that like? How does a child get through that kind of stuff to still love dad in the midst of what's going on?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like my dad said, he's almost 12 years sober. So I was at an age where I think I was old enough to realize something was a little bit off, something was going on, but maybe not old enough to understand what was going on and to really be involved in that conversation. So I think from the outside, I just saw a bit of a change in my mom and dad's relationship. Definitely a lot more yelling around the house. My family's quite loud, but it was a step up. My brother and I maybe being put to bed early and then hearing fighting from the other room. And I think, as noticeable as it could have been to a 9 and 10-year-old, I think my dad wasn't around as much, like maybe not coming to events, not being around the house as much, because obviously he was focused on other things. And I think as a child, I just took that as, oh, dad's not around as much. My parents more angry, just things like that. And obviously, as I got older and they started to explain to me the reasons behind it, and after my dad went to rehab, it became very clear why those things have been happening. Um, and I think to answer the second part of your question, how my brother and I'll speak for both of us, were able to kind of um, support my dad even in the midst of like the tumultuous like changes in our houses, was just because my mom and dad were really great about communicating with us and telling us what was going on. Like my mom took us to rehab a bunch to see my dad. When he came home, he wasn't like sneaky, not hiding anything from us, and he really kept us in the loop. And I think that's what we're trying to teach parents, is that if you just communicate with your kids and teach them, and he taught us about our family history and clearly taught us enough where we could write a book about it. And I think that increased not only like the respect level, but also the trust between us. So now I feel like our relationship is much stronger just because we were able to talk about it when I was young, and we can talk about things similarly now.
That's awesome. So Mark, what was the straw that broke the camel's back to make you decide to change?
It was a comment that a younger version of that girl on the bottom made. As my drinking progressed, I wasn't able to be as present with the children emotionally or physically. That's just what happens to alcoholics. So I'd like to make up for that with gifts and big gestures. So it was one. The family was big fans of American Idol, the TV show, and Leanna was a big fan of David Archuleta. So I remember I bought concert tickets, and I think they were really good seats. And either I got a limo or I drove. I think I got a limo. And I took her to the concert, and I thought we had a great daddy-daughter event. And I thought I only had a couple beers, and she wouldn't notice, or it was just she was focused on the concert. And then the next morning, I asked my wife, "So what did Leanna say about the concert?" And my wife said, "Leanna said Daddy drank too much." So that sort of stabbed me in the heart, apparently. And then a few days later, at a huge business function, I got myself very, very drunk, subconsciously, intentionally, so that the next morning I asked for help. So it was a little comment from a daughter. If those of us that know a lot about addiction, if we knew what made somebody decide to get better, then nobody would be an alcoholic. It's I certainly had worse moments before that. And then you see a lot of people lose their spouse and their kids and their job and end up in prison, and they still don't get help. But for me, it was that one little comment.
And Leanna, what's your viewpoint of that? How did things go that progressed? And
Yeah, I think I definitely remember the evening kind of in flashes, because again, I was pretty young, but I do remember going to the concert, and like my dad said, American Idol was the show, David Archuleta was the artist, and I was so excited to go. And I had a great time, but I just remember kind of like you said, not being as present, maybe him leaving to go to like the beer tent, because it was at a county fair, and they had like all these food tents next to the stage. And I do remember like him going back and forth, coming back with new beers. And as a child, I knew what alcohol was, so I obviously could tell my mom. I remember going home and telling my mom, Daddy drank too much, and I went to bed. Um, and obviously I didn't know why. I didn't know really what was going on, but that's just something I took away, because we went to this concert and then kept going back and forth doing something else. So pretty much what he said. But I think as a child, I just noticed the sort of absence, like you were talking about.
So obviously, it sounds like you checked yourself in to a place, or how did the recovery process go as starting that?
Yeah, I was at a big work function, our annual meeting, and I'm an executive in our company, and I got myself. Nobody had ever seen me drink like that, and it was clearly intentional, subconsciously. And in the morning, I woke up and I asked a couple of my coworkers. I said, I need some help. You guys got to get me help. Then while they were looking for rehabs in Las Vegas, I think this was a good idea. Something in it told me to tell as many people as possible. So I couldn't go. I think so. I couldn't go back on my decision, because alcoholics and drug addicts, trust me, 5 times a week they say, "I'm never drinking again. I'm never drinking again. This is it. I threw up last night and I passed out, and this is it." And you pound your fist, and then 2 p.m. you're having another beer. So I told a lot of people, coworkers, friends, family, and they found a rehab, escorted me. I changed rehabs a week through, and I wanted to be closer to the family, so I was at a rehab here in Del Mar, in San Diego, and 28 days later, as they say, it took me a couple of weeks, but I finally took it seriously, what they were telling me. And then, knock on wood, one day at a time, we're almost at 12 years.
Well, again, congratulations.
Thank you.
So Leanna, what I mean, it sounds like, Mark, the accountability side is a key component. The fact that you told a lot of people to help you walk this path that was going to be difficult, right?
Yeah, for me, that helped.
Yeah, I can see that. So Leanna, I'm curious, you're a college student. There's a lot of societal expectations, especially in that age range. Like your dad said, you join a fraternity, you join a sorority, you join whatever.
Mhm.
That's kind of the atmosphere, the legalization of a lot of the drugs. I mean, we live in Colorado. They legalized marijuana. There's a huge problem here. It's not just a social thing. It's increased stuff. How do you guard yourself in the midst of those kinds of things?
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that I thought about before going to college, and I know my parents definitely also thought about it. I think in high school, I tried really hard to tell the people that were closest to me about the fact I didn't drink, and obviously all of my best friends knew my family. I told them our story. So I always make sure to keep the people closest to me in the loop, just in case something comes up and I need like someone on the defense with me, or just so everyone knows my situation. And I think the biggest thing for me is that college students and young adults are kind of afraid of what they don't understand, or afraid of things that are different. Um, so maybe if I tell someone, oh, I don't drink, they might be like, oh, why? Ask a few questions. But if I just stand there and I'm confident in what I'm saying, very matter of fact, and was like, oh, okay. Like no one really cares what one individual does, as long as you're pretty sure of yourself. I think also I'm honest with people, just as my dad and my family were honest with me. I just told them I have an allergy. There's a lot of addiction in my family, and you'd be surprised about how a lot of people are supportive rather than abrasive. A lot of people are like, wow, that's really cool, like very admirable of you. So I think just being very transparent, because no teenager or college student wants to make their peer do something they don't want to do. So I think definitely just being honest and keeping the people around me informed, and people who love me, surrounding myself with that.
Well,
And Jess, we have there's a chapter in the book talking about peer pressure that Leanna wrote. Most of it, obviously, and it's for those kids that read the book, and give them some tools to push back when they're, not everybody's as confident as Leanna and forceful. So there might be some shyer kids out there that could use some tricks of the trade in our book.
Sure. Well, I think what I'd like to do is approach the conversation again, knowing that people these days are dealing with extreme stress and anxiety, even fear of what's going on in this time that's very different for us, of being locked down or forced in masks and trying to keep other people healthy. Mark, from your standpoint, somebody that perhaps is in business might not be sure if they're recognizing the signs of heading down the road of alcoholism. What are the tips? What are those top 3 things that you need to watch out for, and how to again come out of it?
Sure. Yeah, and this is a difficult time. There's the statistics are just starting to come out about overdoses, and it's more than doubled. It's people are, like you said, they're scared. I generally say, if you yourself think you have a problem, and if you're debating that with yourself, or if you're a loved one and you think there might be a problem with somebody, there's almost always a problem, because that person that's drinking or doing the drugs is normally not telling you, all they're doing. If they're, I had this the other day, that, they see him drink a few beers, but he always seems to be really drunk. What could cause that? Well, it's because he's going behind the scenes and chugging vodka or doing shots. So if you're debating with yourself, or if your loved one or friend, if you think they have a problem, honestly, they almost always have a problem. The specific, there's some decent tests. The one from the Alcoholics Anonymous Big Book that I really like is, all right, so if you don't think you're an alcoholic, go to a bar or restaurant now or outside or something, and have 2 drinks a night. And do that for 2 weeks and see if you really can stay at 2 drinks. Now, a true alcoholic can't. So those first 2 drinks, maybe the first night you'd be like, all right, I'm going to prove to myself. By that third night, you're going to be like, well, I weigh 190 pounds, so really I should have 4 beers, not 2 beers. So that's one of the tests. Not that I'm encouraging drinking, but if you can't stop, a normal person can stop. Like Jess, my wife can stop at 2 glasses of wine or 1 glass of wine. An alcoholic really can't. That's one of the tests. And then I like to say, if you or your loved one switches from wanting to drink to needing to drink, that's an alcoholic. If you find yourself planning your social activities or around alcohol, if you have young kids and you find yourself where it's open, going to Dave and Buster's a lot because they have a bar, going to Chuck E. Cheese a lot because they have beer, making sure that the restaurant you go to serves wine. It's that you transition from that wanting to that need, and usually that's a sign that it's past that point.
Well, thanks, Mark. So, Leanna, from your standpoint, how do people recognize or step away? I mean, you've taken a strong stance, which I commend you on, and what a great example. But for perhaps friends that are struggling, I mean, you're in college. Is it a roommate? Is it a really good friend? Is it a brother? Is it a sister? What are the things to watch for, and how do we help them back out of that?
Absolutely. I think with young adults, it's usually one of 2 things. I think the first is sort of needing alcohol or needing substances to have fun, kind of depending on that, because obviously kids my age are socializing a lot, going out a lot, trying to make new friends. And if you find yourself needing alcohol to drink before you socialize to feel more comfortable, I think a lot of kids have the expectation that, oh, you need to drink a little to loosen up, to socialize, be more talkative. But I feel like my dad said, once you start depending on alcohol to make you sort of personable and friendly, I think that's a big sign that I've seen. And also, especially in light of the pandemic and kind of isolation, if you get really sad or get a bad grade on a test, or something happens with a significant other or friend, and you're like, okay, let's go get drunk tonight. Or, okay, let's use drinking or drugs to cope with what I'm going through. So using kind of like drinking feelings away. I think that's just as much of a problem with younger kids as adults, especially as it's such a transitional time. And there's a lot of new things facing kids my age. Kind of drinking to forget those things, drinking to forget like the hard times of the week on the weekends. And in regards to getting people out, I think definitely I've done this a lot. I just ask my friends like, yo, is everything okay? Do you want to talk about something? And usually if they're in that sort of state where they need to turn to alcohol, a lot of my friends are really willing to talk. And just keeping an eye out, maybe not encouraging the behavior. Like if your friend's like, oh, let's go get some drinks, or, oh, let's do this. You're like, oh, like we can do movie night instead. Finding alternatives to have fun that don't involve alcohol, I feel like is a really big thing. And in regards to drinking away your feelings, just always asking. I think a lot of times teenagers and young adults forget to ask each other how we're doing because of some stigma of not wanting to have something wrong with you. But a little goes a long way, I'd say.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that insight, especially from your age group. And, there's a lot of wisdom there. I will say that, I feel like it's interesting, your dad and my generation, we had to go find the bullies if we were going to get into trouble. And you guys the stuff shows up right here. So you're living through a lot of different things and a lot of different pressures that we didn't experience. And, again, any kind of insight as to overcoming that. I mean, again, that could be something that led somebody toward drinking or suicide. We're going to do a discussion here around suicide as well, because again, the things that are coming forward. But any other things that, Leanna, again, from your standpoint, that you see would help your generation press into healthy and positive things to do, as opposed to some of the negative choices?
Yeah, I think kind of a plug for what we talked about in the book, definitely talking to your children about these kinds of things at a younger age, because if you're talking to your teenager about substance abuse and use after they're already seeing it, you're a little bit too late. So I think getting in there early, and with that, talking about how you can be a resource as a parent, as a guardian, as a friend, just being there to talk. Because a lot of times if kids feel they can't talk to their parents, they will go and talk to the bottle instead, which is a horrible thing. And I think, like you said, with dealing with a lot of new things like social media, everything virtual, I think I do this a lot. I take breaks a lot from social media, from texting, just to step away. I found a lot of other things. And that's a big ask, because I think our generation is so revolved around technology. But I think just stepping away, finding other things, like going on walks with your dog or going to play sports. I just used to drive around at home in quarantine just to get some air. Just kind of take a breather, I think, is really underrated. And also just parents can help with this too, building up your confidence, because if you're looking at your phone, comparing yourself to every girl you see on your Instagram, then obviously you're going to feel a little bit inadequate, and then maybe turn to other things to make yourself feel better. So I think a lot of it's rooted in how the kids are raised and how the parents talk to them, but then also finding other things to kind of take a step back from the virtual world.
Thanks, Leanna. It's like
That's
I said,
good advice.
Wisdom beyond your years. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So Mark, any other thoughts, and where can people find some of this information?
Yeah, I just want to touch on one thing that Leanna said. You're right, she has a lot of wisdom. So alcoholics and addicts, we don't develop coping skills because it's just the alcohol. So when Leanna, referenced having a stressful day or a relationship issue or even a great day, all alcoholics do is they drink. So during my 15 to 20 year drinking career, I didn't really develop coping skills. So that's you maintain your emotional immaturity. So even to this day, you could probably tell my daughter, my 19-year-old, has better coping skills than I do, and I'm almost 50. So very insightful. So to get our book, you can go to Amazon. Or you can go to potatoallergy.com. That's our main website. On that website, we have tips and tools, and you can ask questions. And if anybody, is having financial issues and can't afford the book, just email us. We'll send you copies. Our goal is to get this out there and help as many people, children, especially before they're introduced to the drugs or the alcohol or the peer pressure.
Any other last thoughts, Leanna?
Yeah, I would just say we're trying to get this message out to as many people as possible. So thank you for sharing, and thank you for having us.
Yeah, you're doing great work, Jess. The entire program is just amazing. So thank you for helping people and letting us hopefully play a small part in that.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you guys joining me for this particular segment. Like I said, statistics are going up given the situation that we're currently in, and we want to change that. When we talk about invisible disabilities, it covers such a wide range of things, and people might have stereotypes of, oh, well, that's this or that's that. And I actually think, the addictions to alcohol or drugs are very similar. And again, because you may know somebody and, they act one way when they're someplace and a different way when they're someplace else. And so that in itself is a disability that could be invisible. Again, obviously that has huge consequences in the context of relationships. So anyway, well, thank you so much, guys, for joining me. And, Leanna, have a great year at school. Hopefully they'll get you back into classes. Mark, and I appreciate you guys as a team and a family working through these things and sharing it in such a way that we can help others who are living with this kind of struggle. So thanks so much.
All right. Thanks, Jess. Thanks, Leanna.
All right.
Have a great day.